Lethe, how we doing?
Hey guys, I'm pretty good, thank you. How are you doing?
We're good. We are, I don't know, excited about networks that can last forever and hopefully continue to become more and more valuable. So I think that was the fun framing for our conversation here today as well. Um, just trying to think back to when the last time we had you on. Was it on 11 a.m. or this is sort of the OG stream?
I think it was
I think it
pre
was
pre
before
chain
that.
launch.
Pre chain launch.
Before this pre chain launch.
Love it. Okay, so we got to check. Well, so let's just start off with the basics here first, and then I want to get into some of your rants over the last couple of days, and then of course we can talk about the progress you guys have made because it's been awesome to see. Why don't you just introduce what you're building, get people excited about it, so we can get into some of the nuances.
Sure, so I'm Lethe. So I'm the founder of Asphodel. We're an on-chain gaming studio. And when I say on-chain, I mean 100% on-chain. So our current product that we're working on at the moment and for the next several years is Tamagotchi. I think this is the first 100% fully, completely on-chain game that's been put to mainnet and kind of been deployed there to last. So people call this an autonomous world, but you can think of this as kind of like an immortal virtual world built using the blockchain. It's really trying to build something that's different for traditional gaming, that's leaning into everything that's unique about Web3. So we built those.
Can you catch us up on how adoption, gameplay, etc. has been since you launched?
So Tamagotchi has basically turned out to be something resembling a profitable business. So currently it's covering about half of our costs just through revenue, which is really rare in Web3. And that's just from the sequence of fees on the chain. So we kind of stumbled into a business model here, and I don't think it was something that we expected to be significant until after we launched. But we found that users are essentially just happy to pay gas fees for a game. They are completely fine with this, and some of it's because, they can come in intending to extract, but some of them also seem just happy to pay for the entertainment experience. So we've found a sustainable community. Like it's very small but very hardcore. So we have a pretty hardcore of players who play pretty much all day, who are like super dedicated. There's 2 or 3 communities worldwide. So I think we succeeded in finding a kind of basic product market fit. Like it's surviving in the market, like it's actually functioning. There's a lot of things we want to do. I want to massively upscale things from here, but yeah. So we've kind of finished that very first chapter of just kind of like grappling to find a place as a business, and now we're kind of seeing what we can do from here, which is going to be very different.
So I think L2 sequencer fees and meaningful revenue feel like a bit of a narrative violation if you sort of plug into the broader crypto Twitter discussion. What are people missing there, or what are the specific dynamics that have made it work in your case?
I think simple fact is people are willing to pay a lot for a novel app. We saw a rush of things, for example, with FriendTech, what people were paying or the activity patterns were crazy. People are actually very happy to kind of participate in anything they see as like a long-lasting on-chain social system. People almost seem to be denying the fact that there's a weird kind of product market fit for this. Because, it's tough. You have to be building apps and you have to really get out there and build something that's Web3 native. But there is something there. And yeah, it's not the current narrative. People don't want to believe that, you can just build an app and it will actually get product market fit off Web3 natives. Everything has to be mass onboarding. It has to be more cynical. But I think actually there is like money moving there and there is engagement. So we've definitely found we can do something.
What does that mean in practice? Like, are your gas fees intentionally higher than they are on other L2s to treat them as a source of revenue, or?
Yeah, essentially, our gas fees are essentially disgustingly high, like compared to any other blockchain.
Okay.
So there's no where is the price sensitivity there? Like, have you sort of experimented with that?
So we have. So I actually blogged about this a little while on my Twitter. So a while back we halved the prices. So we wanted to see what was the price sensitivity like, and it had absolutely no impact at all. The users didn't care. It may have affected the way the NFTs moved or similar, but it didn't actually affect user engagement. We found there was no price sensitivity. They were actually willing to pay a cents per transaction just to play something that was interesting to them. So after that, the ETH price then basically doubled again, and it had no impact on the way up either. So, we kind of did an experiment, and it just had no impact on user activity at all. People just did not care.
What are we talking about for what are transaction fees?
So I think it can be, paying per day, people will sometimes pay multiple dollars. So 40,000 transactions, we take home about 0.4 ETH per day. So you can do the math from there. But yeah, we take home a little bit under half an ETH per day.
So for folks that maybe haven't played the game, because this is fully on chain, you are engaging with the blockchain very, very regularly to go do anything there. And so it's sort of like a very small dollar amount or ETH amount, but made up in volume ultimately. So
Yeah, you can think of it like almost like a coin-operated arcade machine, but an MMO. Like players, the longer they play, the more we make this very small stream of ETH, but that then adds up across the whole community, across the people who are using automation or the people who are playing all day into an actual revenue stream.
I'm interested if there's anything that surprised you in your kind of game mechanics or game loops since you've been in market, like things people have liked that you didn't think they would like, or vice versa.
The community are almost more hardcore than I expected. Like we gave them a very complicated game, and they're better at it than I am, essentially. Like their tolerance for like really complex on-chain mechanics. There's definitely some demand for this kind of like hardcore blockchain native thing, obviously amongst people who are blockchain natives. But this is a community who are all early adopters. They often all have money to spend. You can definitely do something if you just go purely for these people. They're crazier than I ever expected them to be.
I mean, I've played the game and got stuck 1.5 million times, and so I can attest to the complication of it, and also I can see the intrigue and why this would just be like an absolute infatuation for people. It's a fairly simple game, but very complex in its application, I guess.
Well, what we really want, inspired by the way EVE Online works, is for the people who are attracted to this type of game, it's about the metagame. It's about the trading. It's about the in-game economy. It's about people forming cabals behind the scenes. So I don't know if you ever saw when EVE Online would generate news stories back in the day. It would be, crazy political coups that had happened in game where someone had backstabbed another guild leader, or, in-game wars that had destroyed like 5 figures worth of resources back when that was important in a video game. But this kind of stuff, the drama was what made EVE into a brand. Even today, like far more people have talked about EVE Online than have ever played it. It's almost like totally unpalatable for the average person. It's like this spreadsheet simulator. Compared to that, Tamagotchi is very simple. And it's about generating drama. It's about the interesting metagame aspect. So, I mean, we're going to be injecting that kind of DAO mechanics into the game next year. So adding factions that are player governed, like allowing them to vote on what happens. It's this metagame aspect, the same thing that attracts people to crypto, I think. Like, it's not often necessarily just trading the charts day to day. It's everything around that. It's this crazy metagame around the token trading that makes crypto interesting, and Tamagotchi as a game is kind of the same way.
So I'm curious where your attention is turning now. Is there sort of a growth motion that you're trying to do here, or are there new game dynamics? Like what's next?
In terms of KPIs, we need more user numbers. So like the raw bottom line is we want to double our number of transactions per day next year. Like we want to go up to about 100K transactions per day. That's, just in terms of the bottom line and making sure the business is sustainable, we need to do that. In terms of how we do it, some of it is new user engagement. Some of it is trying to make the game more engaging. So we keep people coming back every day, but we're also going to want to roughly double or triple the size of our community. So we're going to need to hit more people in crypto and make it more accessible. Like that's kind of where our head is right now.
And I'm curious what the levers you think you need to pull to make that happen are.
Onboarding is still crazy. So there's so many things we can do to make it better. We've been upgrading bridging. We're going to be doing some things soon that will make it easier for people to get to our tokens. So I don't want to announce that yet, but we're going to do some things that will make onboarding a little bit easier in the near future. We're constantly improving the UX. It's drastically better now. So you may find going back these days, it's easier to use. You may still get lost, but less often.
Yeah, I made it over the hurdle to get in. It was then the vending machine. What am I doing here? Like, I mean, I think it is interesting, right? Because this is like you're trying to grow, double new users, and there is sort of like a competency level that people need to reach to really be in the game. So, like, I'm curious if there's sort of changes to, I don't know, the storylines, the early quests, like because I think when I started playing it, you just get dumped into the middle of this map, and then I'm like messaging you, being like, "Yo, what the fuck do I do here?" And you were very, very helpful in helping me figure out what to go do. But is there game, like do you need to kind of lower the bar to expand the level of participation, or do you just keep doubling down on the sort of
I think the
intensity level.
trick is social onboarding. What actually gets people to play, and it's the same with Eve. Eve is still inaccessible, but you have a friend, they sit with you for 4 hours, you come off, you're hooked, and that also onboard you into the social side of the game. Cami is like this, so we have community members who we're kind of sponsoring them to do onboarding programs where they train each other, where they'll mentor each other into the game, which also makes things more social. We're making the game easier at the same time. We don't want to make it harder, but the thing that should bridge that gap is human activity. And actually, that's really native to crypto, because usually what's onboarding people to an app or to an ecosystem is a friend. So we kind of want to drive people to do that. So we will be using like referral systems and then trying to set that up so it's more long-term focused. So people are onboarding their friends, talking about it, training them. That kind of virality is how this works, I think.
Can you give us like an overview of the tech stack here, and maybe like how complicated the build out of this was? Because you guys are pretty cracked. It feels like it still might be a bit of out of the reach even for the average crypto developer.
Yeah, no, this was a completely insane build. You'd have to be deranged to try to build it the way we did, frankly. It's like 300 to 400 smart contracts in there.
Yo.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
Jesus.
it's an insane combination of smart contracts working together to create a game, because it's literally 100% on chain, every single thing. So everything is the EVM. So the underlying blockchain, it has some Cosmos magic going on in the background with Anisha, but it's an EVM blockchain. Everything is kind of standard Solidity. So we use a game engine that is kind of 50% taken from 0xPark's Mud and 50% customized ourselves. Like, it's kind of in-house. We were originally using the public version of Mud, but we ship a Theseused it into something else. And then this kind of manages our system of 350 or whatever smart contracts it is right now, which actually manages the game. So no, I don't think anyone currently has the skills to build this except us. You would probably need a year to train a team up to be able to do this. So we have a kind of unique advantage just in the moat of knowledge required to onboard devs to do this. Nobody else cares enough to actually do this stuff.
Yeah, wow, 300. That's more than I was expecting. Okay, so I loved some of your rants recently. I mean, I would say you are just on a tear on X, and I absolutely love to see it, because I think it's hitting a nerve beyond just sort of those who are interested in the game here. This I love this format. So a very long story here, basically, of I guess kind of the overall narratives that had led you to kind of build in a certain way. So I'll just read a few pieces here. Yeah, leave Ethereum space because they keep telling me not to build on the L1, and I really don't trust optimism. Okay, if I say so. Okay, if you say so. Build a chain on Celestia because they seem like they actually want people to build on the chain. Blah 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 blah. Oh wait, all my TIA contacts got fired. Suddenly pivots to focus on HFT exchanges. Suddenly every Cosmos retard is shilling it. What the fuck are we going to do here? Oh my god, it's over. Well, I wonder how Ethereum thriving L2 ecosystem is doing right now. Look at Vitalik's account. You can just build on the L1. What the fuck was the point of listening to any of you people? I swear to God, every single person trying to coordinate some sort of monolithic blockchain strategy is clinically retarded. You have some opinions. Mm-hmm. What sparked this, and where's your head at with all of this right now?
What I saw was like there has been a crazy lack of narrative alignment with Celestia recently. And you can kind of see, I had some interactions with Mustafa on the feed where I kind of poked him repeatedly. You need to tell us what you people are using your blockchain for, because their narrative has just kind of collapsed and they almost seem to be avoiding committing to anything. They've got into this territory that I see sometimes with like cutting edge blockchains where they pivot repeatedly looking for the market to give them a signal. Each time they're just, they're pulling, they're seeing if people respond to it. And they've got into this territory where they're not only doing that, but it's become so unfocused that it doesn't seem to be resonating with anyone. And, I've found trying to build in good faith. The thing about an on-chain game is it's kind of like, we support other protocols. We're kind of like a mascot. We bring users in, like we use a lot of experimental tech. A lot of our impact on an ecosystem is secondary. So we depend on partners. We need people to list our NFTs. We need people to bring users in. And in exchange, they get something kind of uniquely interesting in their corner of like the world, usually, which is DeFi focused. So, games are really useful to a chain. So when I'm making this choice, I have to be maybe in a way more careful than other builders. And what I've found is that if you're trying to be synergistic with L1 blockchains, the majority of them have failed just because terrible comms and a lack of willingness to cooperate with builders. People seem to be so traumatized by, grant farming, extractive schemes. They don't seem to realize that there can be like a mutually cooperative option. I have to say, I'm really happy with Anisha at this point. But I mean, that post was triggered by our attempts to work with Ethereum. Like, we were literally told not to launch on Optimism. They told us, go to Redstone, go to this tiny controversial chain. We don't want people on Optimism anymore. We're moving everyone to the super chain hypothesis. And I come back 2 years later and so, no, come back to Optimism. Oh no, go to the L1. It doesn't feel like anyone in leadership is willing to take responsibility for a strategy. And if you're an entrepreneur choosing where to build, if everyone's being this wishy-washy, that you can't do that. You can't bet your business on people who don't seem to know what direction they want to go in themselves. And there's just so much of this at the moment in L1 leadership. So yeah, that was the source of my rant.
So if you're restarting today, what would your tech stack decisions where to build be different?
Actually, I think what we've discovered is that doing this like independent chain thing, the only options that are probably worth it are like do this like totally independent chain and take the sequencer fees, or just like give up and go to base. Anything in between those two options doesn't work. Pretty much like the two extremes, like there's arguments for those, but any kind of like mid minor alto one play, like you can't rely on them to win for you. Realistically, their incentives often aren't aligned with builders on their chain. You're just distracting people so they can exit. Like, you have to kind of think either I'm going to build on someone who's so big that they can't screw up, like they're actually like a safe place to launch because their interest is so far ahead of mine that it doesn't really matter what I do. Like, I might get some support or not, but I know they're not going to kill themselves. Or you need to be completely independent. Those are really the only ways to go as a builder.
Yeah, interesting. So world with app chains. I mean, would you consider this like, it feels like it's almost like a derogatory word for what you've actually built here?
It kind of is. It kind of is.
Yeah.
I think it is just like a real app chain. The term's got a bad name because they're like kind of useless, but it's evolved to run a specific app. It has like unique conditions for that app.
Right.
Over time, I think we'll move it away from doing more secondary stuff and just focus like the game activity exclusively there. Yeah, it is an app chain. It's just for once we made an app chain work, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. So world of app chains, or I'm assuming the argument for base is one, it's going to be around, and as you said, the incentives are sort of aligned. But two, I mean, I think that liquidity seems to be like the number one thing that comes up when we talk to builders.
Yeah.
Is there something else there, or are those the big?
It's just liquidity. It's the only thing, but it make or breaks your project. So the only things you can really do, either chase your independence or chase liquidity.
I mean, do you think you'd have meaningful more players if you were built on base, or has bridging to your chain not been as big of a blocker as you may expect?
I think the trick is, and this will tell you something about my future plans if you listen carefully, people will bridge for a game. They won't bridge for a token or for NFTs. This seems to be the rule of Web3. So hypothetically, the thing to do would be to have your tokens on base and keep the game on an app chain separately. That would be optimal. You want your tokens where there's liquidity, and then you can run your apps on an app chain. But more and more, they don't necessarily need to be the same place.
I mean, this just seems to be like the big trend in a lot of the conversations we're having recently is the separation of the asset from the chain, and where those seem to have been locked together in a lot of the ways people were thinking about things, but
they kind of don't have to be, like you can have assets on another chain and be doing something on another chain at the same time. They don't have to be together. Like, there's lots of complex stuff we can do with smart contracts to make that work. So yeah, I expect we may see like execution chains and chains storing value will become completely and totally separate things, which isn't what anyone expected. Actually, Loomdot predicted that last year. He wrote an article on it, but I haven't seen anyone else predict this idea that you would have like store of value chains and execution chains, and that's really the only differentiator.
Yeah, that's interesting. I am curious about the sort of like the resurgence of interest in ETH L1. I'm curious if you sort of think about Ethereum leadership and how they've approached trying to support the growth of this network. What sort of grade are you giving them, and has your thinking there changed in the last few months?
So they've definitely become better in the last year, but the problem is that they've dug a huge hole for themselves over the last few years. Like, there's a lot of builders in the superchain narrative and other periods. A lot of people either left crypto, left for Solana, or left to some smaller ecosystem. Then now they want people to come back to the L1, and the L1 is very cheap. Like, I can see, but if I'm a builder and I have to commit to building for the next 5 years, how do I know that L1 will still be cheap in a year? And they can tell me, oh, we've made permanent upgrades to blobs. I do not trust that at all. So the real issue, I think, now is, although they've started to rebuild trust, then they are doing better. How do they prove to people that they can trust this over the next 3 to 5 years to actually build on the L1? How do they know that, in 2 years' time, someone isn't going to change their mind and say, oh, go back to optimism, actually. We've changed the roadmap. That's the hard part.
Such a wild thing to have a 5+ year view of where things are going, given just the insane shifts that we've seen over the last 5 years.
Yeah. I think I was mostly right about 3 years ago, though. In terms of positioning ourselves to say we'd see this kind of like mass cultural death, that's why I went all in on on-chain gaming. There was a lot of other things I probably wasn't right about, but no, culture in crypto I can usually get a few years ahead of time. That's the only thing I'm confident about.
What were you wrong about?
What was I wrong about? I would have said I'd expect the future to be like a fusion of Cosmos tech and Ethereum tech. And it looks like that's wrong. It looks like all of the attempts to blend in Cosmos are quite questionable. I say that we are on an issue which is like a Cosmos plus Ethereum blend chain, but that stuff seems to be receding. I definitely expected I didn't expect the markets to die out quite as completely as they have in the last 3 years. The thing I didn't predict was the total lack of builders. There's like this shortage now of actual people who showed up to build in the markets. It's crazy. That supply shortage, I never would have predicted that would get so bad. Those at that, I think, really caught me off guard.
Yeah, the consistency with which talent is the scarce asset in this space is, yeah, I mean, we just talked about that forever. And you're right, there hasn't really been a shift, or at least the rate of change has actually come down quite a bit.
I feel like it might be worse. If I compare to like 2022, I feel like I see less new, like sincere builders coming in now than I did back then, which is really strange because crypto in theory is more mainstream, but it's just not onboarding anyone new to actually build stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious and interesting applications right now are kind of backends to proven categories, I guess. It's like if I see another neobank pitch, I'm gonna jump off a bridge.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like
get your bungee cord ready then.
Yeah, I could probably. Sure, there's one in the inbox.
You're going this afternoon.
Actually, I think I have a pitch on Friday. There's probably somebody pitching that.
There you go.
Okay, well, I'm interested in this sort of like advanced cultural understanding or future predicting here. Like, I'm curious if you look out over the next couple of years, what is the cultural shift you see in the crypto space?
I think there has to be another wave of cultural renewal, because the alternative would just be like complete die-off of any organic crypto culture. Like, I think the way things are positioned right now, I'd expect like another Milady. I'd expect something that comes to signify like a new wave of like crypto alt culture. I think we're in the phase before that happens. I think this is kind of like the cultural bottom, and this is around the point where I'm looking for like when something new going to happen. So I think we'll get like a new animating wave of crypto culture at some point next year. I have no idea what'll trigger that, but I'm kind of waiting for that to happen, and then I want to latch onto that, and then I think that will potentially like take us forward into something new.
Okay, when you see it, you give me a call, okay? Like, just, hey, Jess, this is what I'm seeing, because I share that sentiment, and also share the, like, I don't even know where I would put it's like there's not even a game board to put the chips on right now.
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same. Like, if you see anything that looks cool, let me know.
100%. Yeah. This is how we'll figure it out. We'll have our spy network out there, our cultural signals network that's out there. Yeah, I feel like a lot of it was just like this complete destruction of the narrative expectations that people had from the sort of cultural center of crypto. And now what we're seeing, I mean, we were talking earlier today just about the massive shift in sort of excitement from the timeline to, boardrooms and the institutional side of things. And it seems like the people who are most excited about it are not excited about the cultural aspects, they're excited about the functional utility aspects here. And also, I think we just know that I just have this deep belief that there's just so much novelty and intrigue, and we talk about the meta game here around crypto, that I just don't expect that to last very long. But there's always some big shift, big twist, and I mean, the reality is we've seen like a lot of this has been driven alongside macro changes in some way. So that sort of crypto becoming at least reliant on a broader shift in the economy or in economic fortunes of people, or being locked in rooms for a long period of time, etc.
Yeah, and I mean, the macros definitely influence things at the top level, but I do wonder, can the macro really have influenced that loss of devs, or was that something we could have actually avoided? Like, was that another cultural trend happening at the same time? Because I think it had the roots in the kind of culture we saw around like 2020 to 22 or so, when there was a lot of dominance, Trump trading or hiding all the devs to kind of do this new institutional crypto culture. It felt like some of these institutions pushed devs out, and then those institutions kind of gave up and left, and no one replaced them.
Mm.
There was all this stuff like Jump, Fire Dancer with Solana. They've kind of like disappeared into the background now. I feel like I don't fully understand it. I feel like no one in the industry fully understands this mystery of where the devs went, but a mystery of like cynicism, like maybe financial factors as people who raise start to run out of money, VC capital getting kind of flowing in less and less at the same time, some combination of all these things. But it feels like there was an environment shift.
I mean, AI is the
Yeah.
easy answer, but I'm sure it is kind of more nuanced
Well,
than that.
I'm not sure it is. I mean, I think that it's where is there the most opportunity? What's the biggest wave? And I think AI has just dwarfed crypto over the last little while. And I also don't know that there was a ton of really great builders in crypto. Like I don't know if there is this sort of like idealistic world that it sounds like you're maybe talking about here, where there was just like an absurd amount of talent that we're trying to push this space forward. We kind of lived in copycat land if we sort of zoom out and think about the novel applications. Like when we first met you, it was very obvious you had a completely orthogonal view of the world of what crypto is, and the talent and sort of like the technical skills to be able to kind of push off into that frontier and have a likelihood of success there. And
it's very rare that we have conversations like that. Yeah.
I mean, it's true. It's rare that I find people in the industry to have conversations with. But I do remember, I feel like around 2022, maybe before the FTX collapse, I felt like you would have much more intellectual conversations on crypto Twitter. You would find
for
far
sure.
more people in
Yeah.
group chats who are interesting to talk to. It feels like there was this kind of IQ death that started to take place around that time.
I mean, I know my IQ dropped a lot around that time.
Definitely significantly dumber than I was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I mean, I think what's interesting about your approach here is that you really, there's sort of like a deep ideological drive from you here, and then also I think a comfort with kind of not chasing after just pure growth, but trying to go build something sustainable. And maybe that's the right way to say it, right? Like I think there are probably a bunch of other places you could have put attention to grow the top line awareness of what you're building. And yet I think just like the blocking and tackling it seems like you're doing here has really led to like a high conviction user base that I think you should have a lot of confidence in being able to compound over time. Like it feels like we just constantly fall down into this like sugar rush space. And I think if we talk about the death of IQ on in the crypto space, I think in large part it was driven by it's meme coins. It's the sugar rush. It's the speculative tension that can kind of generate that speculative assets can generate. And I think if I think about where the space is going, I think it is going to be these things that feel very small, but that have been compounding, that are all of a sudden just going to sort of break out of left field and capture people's attention.
When you say that sugar rush, that is what I want to capture. What I want to capture is something that can be healthier, that has that same immediate engagement, that same kind of like crack addictive effect as meme coin trading, because it's incredibly important to give this industry something that's more long-term focused, it's also enjoyable. And the reason I've stuck to this vision throughout, I really believe everything about this industry is aligned so that at some point it will have to admit that it needs real culture, that it can't survive without it. All of my chips are essentially in that corner. The reason for building like this, for building something that's totally on chain, for building something that like acquires this hardcore community over time, I want in 10 years time people to look back and go, oh, that was the first true on-chain game, because the unique value of that, when that's immortal, it will always have been the first true on-chain game. No matter how old this industry gets, that's the position I'm going for. I think that's going to be uniquely valuable in the long term. And I think the only way we get to that is if we stick to this creative vision and we do it by building rather than trying to overmarket early on. We have to be really methodical and keep this going, but I think it can be done.
I mean, I feel like that's a great note to leave us on here. Yeah, it's been wonderful to see. I think the approach you've taken and just the craftsmanship that I think you bring and your team brings to the space and to the product you're building here. If folks haven't given it a shot yet, very, very worthwhile jumping in and just exploring the thoughtfulness, I guess, of how you've approached this from everything from the onboarding, sort of some of the tech that you're doing, the user experience that's in there, and the gameplay. I think there's something to learn from. So we're very excited to be early investors in what you're building here, and continue to have a lot of optimism for the future.
400 smart contracts for you to go explore.
Yeah.
What's there not
and
to
you
love?
don't have to explore any of them,
What's
really.
there's not to love?
Exactly. I mean, when you say craftsmanship, that's why I always introduce this as a game studio, because, we're here to build a team that build on-chain games. That's something that has to be, it's a craft. It's something you have to hone over years, decades to get truly good at. That's why I always introduce this as Asphodel, because, we are the people who are crafting this stuff. And yeah, I'm very happy to have you along as investors.
Appreciate it, man. Alrighty, well, go give Tamagotchi a shot. I think you guys have been doing some live streams as well, which I think have been interesting, at least if people want to get a quick overview of what's going on there. And of course, recommend diving into Lethe's threads here, because you've just been on one, and I think it kind of gives folks a sense of maybe where a very competent, forward-thinking builder is, both frustrated and excited. And I think there's a lot here for anybody in the ecosystems, on ecosystem teams that may be listening. Maybe worth a phone call. I think there's some insight here that may be useful to how you go approach building out your ecosystems. Amazing. Well, I look forward to checking back in with you in a couple of months and see where you're at.
Sure, let's do it. Thank you very much for having me on.
Amazing. Thanks, Lethe.
Peace.